Hello, everybody. I'm Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast here in Allegiant Stadium. Where just moments ago, we came up from the locker room where the Las Vegas Raiders lost to the Dallas Cowboys 27-12 in the second preseason game. We have a lot to talk to you about tonight. I'm joined by my assistant beat writer, the one and only Zeke Trezevant. Zeke, thanks for being with us. It was great sitting next to you in the game, down in the locker room with you. Man, we got a lot to talk about, don't we?
Yes, sir. It's going to be a good one.
All right, so let's just start. Let's get right to obviously the most burning question, which is quarterback play. Um, we have been at every practice, we've been at every press conference, everything that there is to go on this entire offseason since last season ended. We have said all along that we were told by the inside the objective was if Gardner Minshew was going to get the job, he had to beat Aidan. He wasn't able to just come in and tie him. He had to beat him. All camp, we've told everybody it's been nip and tuck. It's been dead even. A couple of times Gardner has outplayed Aidan, but there's been a few times Aidan's outplayed him. So nothing changes as far as our outlook. I think you and I and people around the team all expect Aidan to win the job. And there's no way we're not going to take chicken poop and try to sell chicken salad. That's just not the way we do things. But we're also realists. So let's talk about Gardner Minshew first. Let's look at his stats. Let's talk about his rating. Then we're going to talk about Aidan because I think it was different performances. So let's discuss it. So for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew had 21 attempts, 10 completions, so less than 50%, 95 yards, no interceptions, and no touchdowns with a 60 quarterback rating. And here's a couple things that stood out about Gardner to me. There were a few bad throws. There was some time you and I specifically talked about at a time when he is could have just thrown the ball out of bounds. He tries to reverse field, goes back. That could have been a terrible result there for the Raiders. He had another one that could have been picked where the guy dropped it. Those type of things are brutal to him because we'll get into why in a minute when we talk about Aidan. But the point is, it was brutal to him. He did nothing to help himself today. Did not perform well. Not saying Aidan did. We'll talk about Aidan in a minute. But we're starting with Gardner because he was the starter. I don't think he did anything to separate himself at all. If anything, I think it's where it was coming in. I think Aiden's still your leader. I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, so quick answer is I definitely believe that Aiden is still ahead in that competition. But to your point, right, Gardner did start the game today, and Gardner struggled, right, and I think Gardner would agree with that, right. There were some plays where he just flat out just didn't do what he needed to do. He missed a couple of passes, and that was in his own words. And he didn't separate himself. He didn't beat out O'Connell tonight. The thing about Gardner is that he's playing his game, that both guys are doing what they do well. However, what Gardner does well is not quite what the Raiders need right now. Not only that, but what Gardner does in terms of the bad side of what he does is it brings back bad memories of the quarterback trouble that they had last season in terms of putting the ball in harm's way more often than not.
Mhm.
Now, does he do some things that Aidan doesn't do, right? Like extend the play 100%. But a lot of those times, especially tonight, the extending of the play just almost led to turnovers, right? So it's almost like as if you didn't want him to extend the play, right? So yeah, Gardner, he definitely struggled tonight. Aidan definitely had his struggles as well, but he didn't struggle nearly as much as Gardner did.
No, not even close. And to me, if you go back and you pull him out of the game before his last throw, which was a terrible throw and a pick six, I'm not even pretending. It was not even a bad throw. It was a terrible throw. It was as ugly as me in the shower. It's just ugly. But if you would have pulled him out before the last throw, everybody would have been happy.
Mhm.
Everybody would have said Aidan was the guy. So you got a kid who hasn't even played in his second year. He's a second year player. He is what you have seen him to be. He manages the game. He has ball security till that one. That was just the worst throw of camp. But again, I'm not justifying what he did. But when you look at Aidan O'Connell, here are his stats. Okay. He's 14 of 20. So clearly he was more accurate, 96 yards, and he had a QB rating of 76. So again, we're not pretending that Aidan was looking like Kenny Stabler, but one bad throw compared to what we saw from Gardner. And I think it's fair. They're going to base things on ball security. So there's no way of dancing around a pick six on a terrible quarterback throw. If the wide receiver had it bounce off his hands, that's not on the quarterback. But it was just a terrible throw. That's going to weigh in big. But when you look at the totality of what he did with one bad throw, I think you're back to Aidan was ahead a little bit. Without that throw, I think he was ahead a lot,
Yeah.
but he's ahead a little bit right where we thought. And I don't think the quarterback competition changes. Your thoughts on my analysis of Aidan?
Yeah, so you hit it right on the head, right? Outside of that pick six, Aiden was, he played a pretty darn good game. I'll be honest with you, I not making excuses for Aiden at all, but everybody's human, right? And I say that to say that I think Aiden, when he scored, on the drive before, that was the walk off essentially for the game today, right? The preseason game,
Mm-hmm.
Aiden probably should have been pulled after that drive before the pick six, and I think to a certain degree he kind of lost his focus a little bit, right? So as well as he's been playing this preseason, as well as he's been playing this offseason, as bad as that pass was, as bad as that pick six was, maybe that was just a little bit of a reminder of, hey, Aiden, you're doing a great job. You got to keep that attention span. You got to keep that focus through a full 4 quarters, right? So it still showed some room for growth there. But in terms of his overall play, Aiden's been playing well. If you ask me, I think he's shown that he's grasping the offense pretty darn well, right? In terms of what it is that he's trying to do. He showed it against Minnesota. He showed it against tonight. It doesn't always, equal touchdowns, don't get me wrong, but you can see him moving the ball down the field with relative ease, right? And that's with a vanilla playbook being called because it's the preseason. So I think once week one hits and they can kind of let everything show, I think Aiden's going to really come to play.
I agree. And I am certain, I haven't looked, but I'm certain that there were some fans tonight a little frustrated with the offense, but people need to take back, drink a little bit of milk of magnesia and understand that was a completely vanilla playbook tonight. If they were in an actual game setting, they would have been doing some other things. They would have tried some other things. There's a lot of things that you and I have seen from Cam that they haven't even shown in the preseason. So, and there's no reason to show it because nobody cares if you win a Dallas Cowboy preseason game. What if it's something you get to pull out against the Bolts in LA or in Baltimore in week 2? So, again, I don't think either one of us are cheerleading at all. It was not good. Um, Aiden had a horrible throw. Gardner didn't look good. But there's also the reality of one is a young quarterback and the other is Gardner Minshew, who played in an NFL Pro Bowl. He's making tens of millions of dollars more, but he's on 3 teams that all went with younger quarterbacks. I mean, this is his 4th team, and his first 3 all let him go and went with younger quarterbacks. So he should have theoretically been able to come in and win the job.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of Gardner's experience, you would have thought that would have helped him a little bit more. But I will also say that kind of just goes back to Aiden in terms of how much he has grown this offseason, how much he has developed this offseason. And if you ask me, he looks almost like a new quarterback, right? And he definitely looks beyond a quarterback that's starting his second year in the NFL, right? Not light years beyond, don't get me wrong, but he looks like somebody that's been in the league for 3, 4, maybe 5 years. And he's only entering his second season. So as much as we expected from Gardner, I think that just speaks to how well Aiden has been playing this offseason.
Right. You know this. Tonight I put a tweet out there asking the Raider Nation to bookmark it. That tonight was going to be a big night, and I'm going to talk about it at the end of the year. You know what I'm going to talk about. My point is, I thought tonight was a big night for the Raiders. And when we do our season recap, which is obviously a long time away, it's 20 weeks if they don't go to the playoffs. It's could be 22. You never know. But the point of the matter is, I thought tonight was a big night for the team, for the franchise, and for the season that's coming up. And I want to get into a couple things because I think there were some people tonight who had good games that may get overlooked. Trey Tucker, we have been singing his praises all camp. We've talked about some drops because they were there, but we also said he had improved. Tonight, he looked like the emerging superstar that we've told everyone he was going to be.
Trey just keeps on growing. And obviously, Trey, this started last season with him with the preseason. He actually had some drops last preseason, and then he's grown. He grew up throughout the first season, and this offseason he's just taken it to another level. I mean, it was a second week of preseason games where he seems to get open with ease. Whether it's short, mid, or long, at least one or two times a game, Trey Tucker's going to get open. That's what it seems like this preseason. So he's going to take this offense. He's going to help this offense go to another level. And you got to think, he's done this for 2 weeks in a row, and the offense didn't even have, Devontae Adams out there, right? Which is somebody else, obviously, the defense has to worry about. So just imagine what's going to happen when Devontae gets back. So Trey keeps on growing. He's still got a little bit of room to grow, right? He's still got some, drops to kind of clean up. But those are few and far in between in terms of where they were last season. So Trey just keeps on growing, and he's going to be exciting to watch this season.
We'll talk real quick about Devontae. He said he preferred not to play in the preseason. AP said everybody who was healthy would play. We joked about this the other day. He is sore from hurting himself the other day in practice, and but he'll be back Tuesday. So he didn't practice yesterday or 2 days ago, and he didn't play today, but he'll be back Tuesday.
Yeah. I think everybody's interested to see Devontae back out there. It remains to be seen if he's going to play in the preseason or not. But at the same time, he's a veteran. He knows the offense relatively well, and it shouldn't be too big of a deal.
Well, we'll just pray he goes to church tomorrow and gets a touch, and he's feeling all good. All right, let's talk about DJ Turner. This kid has had an amazing camp. Just done so well. I'm so proud of him. I've known him for a while before he ever became a Raider, but I'm so proud of him, how he's playing, the way he's playing. Another big night for him. Underrated, but he's playing so well.
The thing that I've noticed about DJ is that it seems like the offense does not miss a beat when he's in there, right? You see him in there and you're just kind of like, all right, he's there. He's a legitimate threat on the offense, right? He's not a decoy. He's not just an extra body out there. You got to watch where he is, and he's a legitimate threat to catch the ball. So he continues to play well. DJ is a perfect example of how well the receiving corps has been playing this offseason, how well they seem to work together. Trey Tucker kind of mentioned that after the game today. They all work in unison together. So, DJ is going to continue to ball out, and I think he's going to be somebody that Luke Getsy continues to work with and find a way to get the ball to.
I agree with you 100%. Let's talk about another guy that I thought started slow in camp. We were very vocal about it, but he's just been steady Eddie. And I'm proud of him. I'm proud of the progress he made. Now, when we talk about some of these young people, we understand they're not playing perfect. This is the NFL. There's guys getting paid on the other side of the ball too, but he's steadily improving. I've been impressed. I think you've been impressed too. Let's talk about J-Rob. A couple of mistakes tonight, but a lot more uh, pluses than negatives. Let's talk about J-Rob.
I think I actually wrote an article, not too long ago about him. I think his long-term potential for the team, is great. He needs more reps. He needs more repetitions. That's really what it comes down to him. And obviously the defensive line is one of the deepest units the Raiders have on the team. So he's kind of behind a lot of great players, right? That's just kind of where he is. It falls that way sometimes. But in terms of what he can do for the team, he's got the size, he's got the ability. He just needs to get more repetitions in there. So I think as the Raiders go through the season, they're going to continue to kind of rotate guys. And he's a great rotational guy. He just needs to grow into that position. So like you said, made a couple mistakes, but the preseason is the time for those mistakes to be made. And as he continues to play more, those mistakes will go down. So looking forward to see what he does this season.
Jack Jones is a guy tonight that had one really bad play, like Aidan O'Connell, but then played very well, played well into the third quarter. Again, everybody's going to have a bad play. It's why you have to have a short memory. Everyone's going to remember the bad play by Jack Jones, but I thought overall, I thought he had a pretty decent night.
Yeah, Jack, he looks quick out there, fast, maybe, a little bit faster than last season. And I said this about Aidan, and I truly think it was the case with Jack as well, and maybe some of the other starters too. I think some of those guys were playing a little bit longer into this preseason game than what they may have thought they were going to play. And then, it kind of led to mental lapses, right? We're all human, right? Those guys are starters. They're like, why are we out here in the third quarter of a preseason game? And it led to some bad play. But overall, Jack I think he's gotten better than what he was last season. Obviously, the offseason has helped. He looks quicker. And it's to the point where you have to think twice before you throw his direction to his side of the field. So Jack continues to play well.
And there was one play that I know people thought he made a mistake on, and he didn't. A safety made a mistake. And
Mhm.
so he literally put on the afterburners and got to a play, but it wasn't on him. It was too late for him to do something. That's why you kind of have to be able to see. And that's why it's hard to watch a football game on TV because you can't see all the assignments and everything. It's why I love sitting in a press box. I know when my wife goes to games, she wants to be down on the field at the 50, or I want to be way up high in the nosebleeds. That's why I love my job in the press. Let's talk about a guy tonight I think had an underrated night. Far from perfect. Nobody's saying he was, but he made some very good plays. And what happens is these kind of plays don't show up, where he made a quarterback go a third read, a second read, and a couple times, a fourth read because he had his guy. Not a perfect night, but again, Jacorian Bennett ascending. I really liked what we saw from JB tonight.
Yeah, so we talked to Jacorian. I think it was after the practice a couple of days ago here at Allegiant, and he said the words "I'm a dog," and what I can tell you is that I stood in that media scrum, kind of talking to him, asking him questions with the other guys. Obviously, you can tell that last season that he learned a lot from last season, right? Kind of losing
Mm-hmm.
that starting position, having to ride the bench a little bit, watching veteran guys come in and show him how to play, and he's fired up. He's motivated this season, and he's motivated to prove himself. He's a talented guy. And like you said, so I think the thing about Jacorian today is compared to last season was that his mistakes weren't backbreaking, right? Like he wasn't perfect out there, but it wasn't like his mistakes were the cause of a big play or anything like that. So you didn't really worry about him out there like you kind of worried sometimes last year. So ascending is definitely the right word. I think he's secretly, quietly a potential X factor for the Raiders defense this season. If he can get out there and get some significant playing time and keep on improving, this defense is going to be on another level.
I agree with you. We talked tonight to him exclusively. I talked to Janarius Robinson exclusively. I wanted to get some time with those guys, just kind of getting some information from them, trying to dig in a little bit into their brain, what they were thinking. Um, I talked to DJ Turner as well. So let's get back to where we are. I understand, I am sure, and I'm not even reading the comments, but I am sure Raider Nation is very frustrated. I don't blame them. They want to see their team go out and win a Super Bowl. The franchise has sold them just win, baby. But at the end of the day, I think it's a better team than it was last year. I'm going to revisit my 10-win prediction. And when the after the 53-man roster is released, and tell everybody what I think. I always do that. I give it as soon as the schedule comes out, then I give it when we break camp. But I want to talk about a couple things that stood out. There were a few things that Aidan O'Connell did tonight that aren't going to show up in a stat sheet, but they were big deals. Throwing the ball away. You saw him roll, get the ball out of his hand. Stuff that you don't see with Gardner, just ball security. But he made a couple of throws that were Tom Brady esque. And you know what I'm talking about because you looked at me at one of them and go, that's a Tom Brady move. I want you to break it down because you got it. I saw it earlier, but you saw it tonight first. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So you hit it right on the head in terms of Aiden making plays that don't necessarily show up on the stat sheet. They might not lead to a touchdown, but guess what? They didn't lead to a turnover, or it leads to a beneficial play in a roundabout way for the team. And specifically, I've noticed a couple of times tonight, and in practices where Aiden and I've actually heard Tom Brady talk about it, where Aiden would throw the ball to the receiver, and the receiver literally doesn't necessarily have a chance of catching the ball because of pass interference is going on or an illegal touching is going on. So when Aiden throws the ball, he's not even necessarily throwing it for a completed pass. He's throwing it for the flag. And almost every time he does it, the flag comes out, right? It's because he's seeing that that's happening and he's throwing it that direction. That is something that is beyond most players entering their second season with their third offensive coordinator. That doesn't usually happen with a quarterback that young. That they can pick up on the nuances of the game like Aiden has continue to do gradually. So yeah, I definitely noticed that today, and it was just one of those things that it points to Aiden's growth this offseason.
I think it's also fair to point out Aidan O'Connell wasn't with starters tonight. I mean, he didn't have his complement of starters around him. That's something that I think is important. He certainly had a bunch of them, but I'm pointing out the realities. I'm not a fan, so I don't come at it being critical and I don't come at it being a cheerleader. I just try to keep it right down the middle. I think the reality here is this, that Aidan O'Connell is, other than the pick six, better night, younger guy. There's a lot of life left in him. And I think the Raiders are going to find out exactly what they have. We talked about this all off season. If Gardner came in and won it, great. Then they knew they had their quarterback of the future. If Aidan came in and won it, great. And if he progresses and leads his team to 10 wins or whatever, or plays well and it's not his fault wherever they end up, then they've got their quarterback of the future. And if they don't, they're a better team by getting Brock Bowers, who didn't play tonight just because he was nicked up. He's fine. Uh, and they're okay and ready to move on. I know everyone wants results today, and they're allowed to feel that way. It's not my job to tell fans how to feel. But as an analyst, I think that this was a not a good performance. But I also think you can have not have a good performance, and you have to keep it in balance, and you have to keep it. It was a preseason game. And I think
100%.
you have to keep that in perspective. I'd love some more thoughts by you.
Yeah, 100%. And when you say you have to keep some things in perspective, that's in a positive way and in a negative way, right? And certain things in the preseason translate, certain things don't translate, right? And some of the things that Aidan was doing tonight, both good and bad, they translate. The turnover, right? That will translate. You can't make that kind of a pass, right? So fix those kinds of things, right? But some of the passes that he was completing, even though it was the preseason, that's going to be there in the regular season as well. So you got to keep it in terms of the preseason, keep it all in perspective, both positively and negatively, to get a good idea of what's to come. So you got to pick and choose what you want to take from these preseason games.
And like I had one of Aiden's teammates tell me after the game, would have been nice if we could have done some things. But when you're trying to march down the field and you've got a very small vanilla playbook because you don't want to show anything to the Bolts and you don't want to show anything to Baltimore, it is what it is. I mean, there were some decisions tonight they would not have made in a regular season, trying to look at some scenarios. And again, we're not making excuses, but we are presenting reality, which is what our job is.
100%. And I will take it a little bit further in terms of you said they didn't want to give anything to the Bolts. They didn't want to take it a step further, right? Like, think about it. These guys go to the playoffs. If people don't think that, opposing teams in the playoffs are going back to your preseason tape and looking at the preseason, picking up any little thing they can for that playoff game, which the Raiders could find themselves in the playoffs this year, you're not thinking deep enough, right? So it's bigger than even week 1 or week 2. You got to think down the road, right? Hey, what are opposing teams going to look at when they're trying to dissect the Raiders? They're not just going to start with your week 1 tape. They're going to go figure out what your starters did well and did not do well in the preseason. And then they're going to say, hey, if they struggled with it in the preseason, let's see if that same player struggled with this in week 10, in week 12, and week 14. Because if they're struggling with it all that time, they're going to struggle with it in the playoffs as well. So you want to keep it pretty vanilla in terms of what you're running in the preseason.
Can't argue with you one bit. All right, let's talk about a different. I mean, I know a team I covered once where they put in 4 or 5 different plays and used them during preseason. And I remember literally going out for a sandwich with the head coach and saying to him, where did those plays come from? I've been at every practice. I haven't seen it. And he goes, you're never going to see it again either. But for the rest of the year, every team we play is going to have to game plan for that.
Yep.
Sometimes people forget the strategery
Mm-hmm.
of the preseason, don't they?
100%. I mean, it's the NFL, man. It's the highest level of football. Just like those players get paid a lot of money to go perform, these coaches do as well, right? And there's jobs and families that depend on a coach doing their job correctly. And
Yeah. And yeah, we lost you there for a second, Zeke, but I'll end with this because I think this is really important and it's something I want to dig into with you. But I think the big thing, Zeke, and we lost you there for a minute, but the big thing here is that I really like this Getsy offense. They've added a lot of new wrinkles to it. Other than Bowers running at fullback, we haven't seen it. And then with the defense, okay, the defense has not stopped the run. this preseason the way they did last year. However, you're not seeing certain stunts, you're not seeing blitzes. There's a lot you're not seeing. So I don't blame people for panicking, but I'm also trying to be your delivery man telling you, hold on a minute. It's like walking into a bakery and saying, well, this isn't a very good croissant. And they haven't even mixed the ingredients yet, let alone baked it. I, I think there are reasons here for people to say, okay, that's concerning, but I don't think there's any reason for panic whatsoever at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. Now you're a fan. I'm not. Do you think I'm wrong?
Well, I do think that the run defense might be now obviously they're not, just like the offense is running a vanilla playbook, the defense is as well, and they're not going to show all of their different stunts and their plays on defense either. So all in all, I think the run defense is going to be fine. But there is certain, it's been 2 weeks in a row now where there've been they've been gashed on the ground early.
No doubt.
Now, when the defense started to say, hey, you're not going to run the ball on us, when they started putting 5 defensive linemen out there, you're not running the ball against their 5-man front. It's not going to happen. But they had to focus on that. If it's only 4 defensive linemen out there, if it could be problematic depending on how they run the defense. In terms of Getsy's offense, very excited about Getsy's offense. I'm not gonna lie about that. I'm very excited, mainly because last season it was difficult to watch the Raiders offense last season. It was, and I've said it once, I'll say it again. The offense last season was outdated. It felt like they were trying to fit a early 2000s offense into a 2023 game, and it just did not work. You might have did okay for half the first quarter or the first quarter, if that, and then the defense figured it out and it was a wrap. This offseason, you can already see, I mean, look at the first drive against Minnesota, right down the field almost, right? You can see whether Aidan completed the pass or not, at least the plays they were running made sense. It's a cohesive offense. Not saying they're going to score 60 points a game or 40 points a game or anything like that, but whether it works,
they don't have to.
Exactly. But at the very least, you can see the thought process. You can see what they were trying to do. It at least made sense what they were out there trying to do, which honestly wasn't always the case last year. So Getsy has, you can tell he's dialing them up. I'm interested to see what else he has in that playbook of his, because it's been vanilla this offseason. So I'm excited for week 1 and the early part of the season, just to see him open up that playbook fully and see what it looks like when they're trying to win a football game, when they're actually out there trying to win the game. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Okay. And you've been at practice, so don't play stupid. I'm anxious to see what he has. You know what he's got, and it's going to be fun, isn't it?
It's going to be tons of fun. I'm trying not to open up that bag, but yeah, it's going to be. Raider Nation is in for a pleasant surprise on offense this year, for sure.
All right. Last thing I want to just quickly say to all of you who've become members of our Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. It's $4.99 a month. We have a new feature coming just for you. We're still going to give a free podcast every single day. But for those of you that just choose to become members, when you become a member, there's a video that'll pop up for you that you get to see, telling you about this new service. I think you're going to really be excited about it. So please check that out if you haven't become a member. Again, nothing's changing. You don't have to become a member. You're still going to get the same great content every single day. But if you become a member, I think you'll enjoy it. Zeke, going to be an interesting press conference with AP tomorrow. He said it could be a couple days before they announce it. We're going to find out. But last week, they said none of the starters are playing next week. So we're going to watch a lot of the young guys fighting for this roster. I'm really looking forward to that San Francisco game, and I'm looking forward to spending more time with you this week, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it as well. We're 1 week closer to week 1, and it's going to be a fun season.
Let's get it on, brother. That's the great Zeke Trezevan. I'm Hondo Carpenter. Thanks for listening tonight to the complete recap of the Las Vegas Raiders preseason loss to the Dallas Cowboys, and for paying attention to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Thanks, everybody.